Hey everyone, if you're taking AP World History, you're in the right place. Marco Learning is with Antisocial Studies, the best Instagram page and YouTube page in the world, not the best TikTok. Don't
And
follow her
TikTok.
there. Don't. Everyone, we're going to go over very serious test preparational things. I'm going to begin with a bit of nonsense at first. And the nonsense, actually, not nonsense, this is very good. We have 2-page reviews for each of the units. This is available in the description of this video. This is available for you. Take advantage of it. I'm going to link to this. Now for the nonsense. So on Instagram, there's this really great account called Antisocial Studies, short for Antisocial Studies. She's not on TikTok yet, so you can't follow
Right,
her
even on
there.
TikTok.
No, mute. Hang on, I'm muting you. I've actually Antisocial Studies is a great page. Follow her there on Instagram, but follow me at Marco Learning I've literally muted her on TikTok because Emily is just a few thousand away from me and I need to beat her. And so follow, subscribe. That's all I care about. Here's my dog. He's typing. Just trust me. And then the other thing I want to show you is Emily and I have as part of our ongoing battle on social media have she wrote a DBQ for me, and she actually put that in the title that I forced her to do it, and then I graded it. We have a DBQ walkthrough. We have a whole playlist for AP World that's on our channel, so definitely check that out. Now, Emily, there's lots of questions going on about the digital AP exam. So one thing I want to show people real quick as one final little goodie for that I'm going to put in the chat is our ultimate guide to the digital AP exams. If you've been paying attention, everyone, you know that the digital AP exams are a little bit different. The long essay question on AP World is going to be gone. You're not going to be allowed to move back and forth on questions. You're not going to be able to annotate on the exam, or you will be able to using their software. You type your free responses and you got to manage your time. So this is a really cool resource called the Ultimate Guide to the Digital AP Exams. I'm going to link to that in the chat. I'm going to be hanging out with everyone in the chat. Emily, you have students who took a digital AP exam today.
Mm-hmm.
RIP US History. What did they say about the experience? What are some high level things that you're hearing from people about taking a digital exam?
Well, first of all, I did not, knock on wood, I did not hear of any crisis. And now I don't have a ton of APUSH kids, so I'm definitely not like a good sample size, but it seems like the app is running as well as it can be expected, which is nice. I did have a few students who had like, they thought they'd turned off notifications, but like a random email notification would pop up in the corner and then just kind of hang out there. So if you can figure out how to turn those off, I think it was just mildly distracting, but otherwise it was fine. But yeah, it's like they seem to think it was fine. There were parts of it they felt were hard, and there were other parts they didn't think were that bad. I didn't hear anyone that was really freaking out about the not being able to move back and forth. Like, I really think if you're just mentally prepared for that, if you know that's what it's going to be, I don't think it actually hurts you very much. You don't normally want to go back and change all your answers anyway. So they all seemed fine. No crisis.
That's awesome. I did see a couple of tweets and things here and there, but compared to the 2020 exams, which were 40 minutes long and kind of weird and on the phone, none of that is happening. So, Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I know you were on your channel, Antisocial Studies. Guys, that's the place to be for AP World History and for US History and for lots of resources. Follow her there. But Emily, what's the best way for us to structure this review for digital exam students? And
I don't know. I think there were a lot of questions in the live that I was just doing about the test itself, and I was trying to just cover content. And frankly, I've literally covered the content in every possible way that I can. I've done it on TikTok, for God's sake. So I think the next hour, I think we can maybe walk through the different sections of the test and maybe give our approach, like what to expect, some reminders about your best strategies, and then here and there, if you or I see any questions in the chat that we feel like are, even if it's content that are like really big or whatever, we can address those. But you're going to start with the multiple choice, right? So we can start there. You're going to have 55 questions in 55 minutes. That makes it easy to pace because you're going to have a timer at the top that's counting down. And so if you look at the clock and it says 30 minutes left, you should look at your progress and see that you have around 30 questions left. Right? That's a really easy way that you can tell if you're on track. If you have 30 minutes left and you see like, oh, I still have 40 questions left, you're like, oh, I need to pick up the pace. A lot of students actually said when they practiced it, they were like, oh, I actually went way faster than I thought. And I ended up at the end with like a lot of extra time and I couldn't go back. So.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing about timing, right? Because there is a timer in the software. And in fact, for those of you who haven't seen it real quick, I'm going to pull up before I jump into the chat and turn this over to Emily. I want to just show you all this this kind of preview here. If you haven't downloaded the software and installed that all yet, like what are you doing? Do that now.
Yeah, stop watching this and go do that.
Go do that. And that link is actually in the ultimate guide that we've got there. But I want to show you real quick in this platform. If you haven't spent your time here, you got to get your username and password, log in, get all situated. And then you enter lockdown mode. As Emily said, that means that you're not going to have like music and other things going on, but there were like sometimes some notifications that came through. The point is you're not communicating and doing any of these things. Now, when you get to this section, you'll see there's a timer up at the top. You can hide it until there's 5 minutes left. And then this blood red timer is staring at you for the remaining 5 minutes. You'll see how this is the annotation tool. A bit of a controversy has emerged about this. Like, what do you use this? Is it actually kind of like not great? So I'm not actually typing anything. This is the College Board slide showing you guys how in a DBQ or whatever you can mark this. Now, Emily was just talking about multiple choice on your exam tomorrow, everyone. And I want to go here and show you what it looks like. You're going to have your text on the left. Now, this is AP World History. So we don't do fish, we don't do temperatures. We do maps, and we do like artifacts and texts. So the text will be there. It will stay on the left. You can zoom it out, kind of expand it out. And then the question will be on the right. You can also zoom in and kind of expand out and all of that. And then notice what's going to happen. As soon as you click done, you can't go back. And this is really important because all this clicking, all this going back and forth, as Emily was just saying, you got to manage your timing thoughtfully. Create one milestone partway through. It's 55 questions, 55 minutes. At question, you suggested 30. That's a great idea. Use that to sort of temperature check where you are with the timing. And finally, I'll just say real quick about the software. You see these multi-part SAQs right here. You can move back and forth within the individual parts of an SAQ, but you cannot, once you've submitted the full question one, ever return to it again. It will be locked in the College Board vault and only Trevor Packer will see it or whatever. And then here you can copy and paste within the software. Emily, quick question for you. Are you recommending people touch bold, italic, underline, superscore, Greek letters?
No. Please don't. As a grader, please don't.
Please don't.
Right? That seems really confusing. Yeah.
I don't know why that's even there. So yes. Anyway, that's just a quick preview for you. Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you. Hop in the chat and answer some questions, and maybe I'll come back in. There are some requests for my dog to appear.
Of course.
So he's more popular.
That will happen at some point. We're going to hold that as like a little like carrot to, get us through this live. You know what I mean?
Great, thanks.
So yeah, the multiple choice, again, I'm just going to walk y'all through my basic strategy, which I've said in a few different lives, but it bears repeating, which is that, first of all, you are not trying to get all of them right. You do not need to get all of them right. To get a 3 to a 5, you're wanting to get anywhere from 60 to 80% of the questions right. What that means is even if you're shooting for a 5, like the best score, you can still miss like 10 or maybe 10 questions. You can miss 10 of the 55, like 1 in every 5, and still be okay. And so I say that because I worry that there are some of you out there who are like me, who are perfectionists, and who are like, if I stare at this question for long enough, I can figure it out. Don't do that tomorrow, right? Like set some sort of time limit for yourself and say, you know what? After 2 minutes, 3 minutes for sure, if I'm still can't figure out this question, I need to just cut ties and move on. I need to just make an educated guess and move on. And let me tell you how to make an educated guess. Don't just pick B. Don't just pick a random letter. That's not smart. Like y'all are smarter than that, right? So first, you eliminate any answers that are just historically incorrect. Like if it's factually inaccurate or if it's not from that time period, then it can't be the answer, right? If it is maybe true but has nothing to do with the question, cross it out. Hopefully you can get yourself down to 2 answer choices. The way that they build these questions is that most students most of the time will get themselves down to 2 and then be like, these are both right. And I always have students like come up to me when we're taking tests in class being like, I think that you messed up the test because these are both right answers. And I'm like, no, that's impossible. They're not both right. Now they might both be true statements, but only one of them answers the question you're being asked. So when you get down to the 2 or 3, go back and reread the question and really pay attention to the very specific key words of that question, right? So if it's like, which of the following best exemplifies, and then it's like the context of the events described in the passage, then you're like, okay, I'm not necessarily talking about what's going on in the passage. I'm thinking about what's going on in the rest of the world that's impacting this. And then go back and look at the questions. That might not be helpful though. You might be like, yeah, I already tried to do that and I still am down to only 2. Well, then here's the deal. They don't give you the stimulus for no reason. Now, there are some questions where the map or the image or whatever is more helpful than others, but it's never random. And so if you're down to 2 or 3 and you need to guess, we'll try to pick the answer choice that literally has more words related to like what the document's about. So if you have a painting and it's of like a preacher in like a missionary in Japan or something like that, and you have 2 answer choices that you think could be right, and one talks about belief systems and one talks about trade, okay, pick the one with belief systems because it's a missionary, right? Like that's a way to guess in an educated way. If you're still completely stuck and you're like, I have to just pick a random letter and move on, instead of picking a random letter, pick the answer that's more general, right? If you have an answer choice that's really specific, it can be the correct answer, but like every part of it has to be right. So if you're just down to 2 or even 4 and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time, don't just pick B, 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 B. Pick whichever one is the most vague, right? Because if an answer choice says something like, Christian merchants traveled and settled in Southeast Asian trading city-states and blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of specific things. Not just any Christian merchants, not any merchant, Christians. Like that's so many specific things. But if instead you see an answer choice that's like, various cultures spread via trade routes. Great, pick that one. It's more often than not, it's the more general one. And so again, it is way better for you to like take the L, take the loss on a few multiple choice questions and be like, you know what? If I had 10 more minutes, I could probably figure this out, but I'm just going to try to make my most educated guess and I'm going to move on. You want to make sure you get through all the questions. The worst thing you can do tomorrow is leave questions blank, especially on the multiple choice. You have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right. So that is the multiple choice section in general. You're going to have the 55 questions, and then my understanding is there's no break. When that 55 minutes is up, you move on to the SAQ. Now, you know, if you finish and you have like 3 minutes left, then you sort of have a break. You're just going to be sitting there while the timer goes down because you can't go back, right? So if you get through a little bit early and the timer's like, cool, the next section will start in 3 minutes, then you've sort of carved out a 3-minute break for yourself. Some people are asking like, can I have water? Can I listen to music? That sort of thing. Officially, no. But like, I feel weird about the College Board telling you can't drink water. So I think that the issue is that like, let's say you spill water on your computer in the middle of your test, like that's not going to be a reason to get a makeup test is my understanding. Like just because they're like, well, okay, technically you're not supposed to have food or drink where you're testing. And I think it's just that they don't want to deal with people being like, well, my soda spilled on my keyboard. So if you do have water, I would just keep it off your desk so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, John, were there any good questions in the chat or should I move on to the SAQ? What do you think?
Let's jump into the SAQ. There's been a lot of requests. By the way, if you're just joining us, definitely let us know how we can help you in the chat. Press that like button on this video and subscribe to our channel. We are answering questions about the AP World History exam. I say let's get into some SAQ strategy. I've been seeing a lot of great comments about that. And then we can talk a little bit about like why you shouldn't be worried about the SAQs as some like work of art, but just, you know, Tom Ritchie always says that short answer questions are just specific answer questions. Go from generalities to try to get something specific and make sure you're answering it specifically, and that's going to help you. But what are your tips for SAQs?
Yeah, and first of all, I just want to be really quickly, I saw in the chat, like, can I go to the bathroom during the break? Yeah, you're in your home. You're gonna be in your home. Yes, go to the bathroom if you need to go to the bathroom, right? I would say for the entire however many hours of the test, you should not interact with a smart device besides the computer you're taking the test on. So even in the break, do not pull up your phone. Do not pull up TikTok. Like, don't go onto another computer, nothing, right? Like, so yeah, go to the bathroom, go grab water, look out the window and like remind yourself that there is life outside of AP World, whatever. But I just would not risk any of it, like any misinterpretation of what you're doing, right? If for some reason I don't even know. Whatever. We're not going to get into the technology stuff of how they're going to know if you're cheating or not. John and I can maybe talk about that at the end. The SAQ is like both very hard and very easy at the same time. But the thing is, like, there are enough SAQs that like one that you struggle with is not going to kill you. It's going to be fine. Because you're going to have 5 SAQs, right? You'll have 3 in the section right after the multiple choice. Then you'll have your break. You will have a 20-minute break. And then you'll have your DBQ and 2 more. And so what I want you to think about is, like, if each SAQ comes with 3 little mini parts, A, B, and C, that's 15 overall. It's okay if there's a few of those that you're like, oh gosh, I can't think of a very good example. Make a guess, shot in the dark, and move on. And again, I'll tell you how to make an educated guess in a second. But the reason why I say they're hard and easy at the same time is, like, it's hard because you have to know something. Like, you have to know something, right? On the multiple choice, there are some students who just can sort of figure it out, can just sort of like logic their way into the right answer a lot of the time. The SAQ, you have to know something. There's no choices, right? So if it says, like, explain one way that a non-Western state adopted Westernization in the 1800s, you're like, well, shoot, you got to know at least one. And then you would say, well, one state that did was Japan. In their Meiji Restoration, they rapidly industrialized, building a lot of railroads, and they did this to try to keep up with Europeans and keep them out of their, island nation. Great. Okay. So you only have to know one thing, though. That's why I say it's relatively easy, too, because it's really simple. I think at most on an SAQ, most SAQs you're writing 2 to 4 sentences. I don't think you need more than 4 sentences. Honestly, if I'm reading an SAQ and it's more than 4 sentences, at some point I'm like, okay, well, they just don't know what they're talking about because they're just like talking around in circles. So the only difference, I think there are a lot of students that get really hung up on the different verbs, describe versus explain versus whatever. The only verb you should care about is identify. If it just says identify one, blah, blah, blah. Identify one state that adopted elements of Westernization in the 1800s. Then all you have to do is identify it. And so what I suggest is you try to do as much as you know of, like, who, what, when, where in like one sentence. So I would literally say one state was Japan in the Meiji Restoration, period. That is enough detail that, like, the grader will know you know what you're talking about. Like, if you say one was Japan, maybe, but it's like, maybe you were just throwing out a random country and hoping it was right. So if you say Japan in the Meiji Restoration, now they're good, right? Now, any other verb, if it says identify and explain, if it says explain, describe, compare, whatever, you're basically doing the same thing. Don't get tripped up on the verbs. You're doing the same thing. So if they say explain one way that innovations expanded trade networks of exchange from 1200 to 1450. Well, you have to first identify something. So you can say the caravanserai expanded the Silk Road. You've now identified an innovation that expanded a trade route, but you still have to explain it. So one more sentence, maybe 2 more sentences. Well, they did this because they provided a safe place for travelers to stay. And so travelers felt more comfortable traveling longer distances away from home because they knew there would be a secure place to sleep, sort of refuel their camels, whatever, right? And then continue on. And it also promoted, like, exchange, where then, like, more trade occurred. Great. That's like maybe 3 sentences, right? And then you move on with your life. Okay. What if you have no idea? What if it's like, explain the context. I don't know. Explain the context. One of the things they'll do, actually, this is a good one. They're going to give you a secondary source. They're going to give you like a historian's interpretation of an event. And I guarantee you the question's going to go something like this. So let's say there's like an American historian writing in 1991, and they're writing about the Mongol, like, brutal conquest and oppression and anti-rights and anti-democracy of the Mongols or whatever, right? They're going to ask you, like, identify one claim made in the passage. One claim was that the Mongols were anti-democracy. Then they're going to ask you, like, tell me a piece of evidence probably that either supports or refutes the argument. So you have to come up with something on your own. And then one of the things they might ask you that confuses a lot of students is they might be like, now tell me why the historical situation that the historian is writing in explains like their view in the passage. And what that means is this is like Inception now. This is what we call historiography, and like ultra nerds like me get really excited. What you're doing now is you're evaluating the way a historian in one historical time period, 1991, is evaluating another historical time period. So you might go, oh, 1991 American, oh, that's like the end of the Cold War is ending. So you'd be like, well, maybe this historian is extra interested in like massive Asian land-based empires that were oppressive and anti-democratic because they're trying to make a comparison between the Mongols and the Soviet Union to make the United States look better, right? So again, just know they've already told us what the SAQ, what the like stimuli are going to be. There's going to be a primary source text, a writing from Marco Polo being like, China's awesome, whatever. There's going to be a primary source image. So that might be a painting, a portrait, whatever, right? There's going to be a map. Sorry, there's going to be a map. It's not a mapping question. It's not going to be like, where is China? It might be a map of like the Crusades. And then it's asking you questions about the Crusades. And then in this last section, it's going to be a data set, like a chart, a graph, whatever. So if it's like Meiji, Japan, all the charts are going to be like this, up. Coal, up. Railroads, up. Everything's up. And then the last one is going to be a historian. It's going to be like a historian kind of probably from the 20th century, most likely, writing about an event in the past. And they're going to have you analyze it. So, okay, with that in mind, there's some great questions about like the words. Historical process. It's an ongoing thing that happened in the past. Historical development. It's a thing that happened in the past. Like, don't overthink. I do think a lot of students get really like caught up in the vocabulary of the College Board, which is sort of on purpose. That's why they do it that way. Like, if a prompt says evaluate, this would not be an SAQ prompt, but evaluate the extent to which networks of exchange fostered innovation. They're asking, like, tell me how trade routes came up with new ideas, how trade routes led to new ideas. And so, like, what I always suggest is if you get stuck, if you see a prompt that you don't really know the answer to, just translate the words that you can. Like, ignore the verbs for now and be like, all right, networks of exchange, that basically means trade routes. Innovation, that means like new ideas and technology. And then they'll give you a time period, 1200 to 1450. And be like, all right, fostered, I'm not really sure what they mean by fostered. Evaluate the extent, I don't know. I'll talk about that in a second. But you're like, okay, but trade routes, innovations in that time period. Okay, I know some of those. Let me just talk about those and like what they had to do with trade routes. Again, for an SAQ, if they say like, identify and explain one way that gunpowder empires consolidated their power from 1450 to 1750, and you're like, I'm not sure what the word consolidated means, but I know that the gunpowder empires are like the Ottomans, and power, well, they like enslaved people, that'd be a thing. Or they had a powerful navy that fought the Spanish. Okay, so if you need, you can guess on the SAQ too, right? You can look at the keywords of the prompt, gunpowder empires and like power. Okay, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark. I'm gonna tell you something I know about power and a gunpowder empire and hope it's right. And then I'm gonna move on and hope I do okay on the other ones. Again, for the SAQs, you're shooting for getting like 2 out of 3 right. So whether that's like you get A and B and then C you don't feel great about, or you know, you do super well on like 2/3 of the SAQs. Okay. Let's see. John, hop back in and let me know if there's anything in the chat.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to show Emily real quick, what were the, because I was listening to your advice here about the SAQs, and I thought this was really great. These, of course, everyone, are the 2021 FRQs. So I'm going to pull this up real quick, and I'm going to put this in the chat, and then I'm going to pin it for everyone to see. So you all can click on that pinned message in the chat for the FRQs. These are from 2021. And just as Emily was saying, you're going to get one of your 5 short answer questions on this AP exam is going to be awkward, lame, historian quote, followed by 3-part multiple choice. And there was some confusion earlier that I want to clear up. You are allowed to move back and forth among each of these 3 parts of the short answer question. And then once you submit the entire question 1, you're never allowed to see it again. That's how this is going to go. You're going to get 3 at the beginning before your DBQ. Then you're going to have that 20-minute break. And then you're going to take So
The
20 minute break,
DBQ.
DBQ, thank you, and then 2 more SAQs. I was looking at the chat, big mistake. I can't anything. And remember this. This is one of the things we're also getting a lot of comments like, "Bro, I could cheat." Fine, but guess, okay, Emily, let's cheat on this question right now.
Yeah.
You got a question with an image of all these people at the Olympics, right? Winning gold medals, or the ladies of France. And it's from 1890. The content you need to be reading is here, the stuff at the top. Emily is obsessed with this on her channel. If you ever watch Emily TikToks, don't watch her there. Watch her on YouTube. If you ever watch her material, she's saying, hey, it's all right here. Read this. And then look at this, all the words translated from Francais into AP speak, and then you answer this question. This is already an open book test for short answer questions that are stimulus based. It's already, look at this DBQ that everyone's crying about, right? It's all, wait, where was that? That's...
Well, and by the way, while you're pulling that up, like, okay, let's say I went and like Googled the title of that image. Well, I can find where I can buy a copy of it for $500. Like, they're going to pick documents where it's like, it's not like you're going to Google it and there's going to be someone being like, here's how to apply this to a specific prompt about blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just dumb. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's exactly, it's misunderstanding how this test has been designed. It's a stimulus-based test, and it's also thematic in its orientation. Now, one thing, like, we have our free study guides for AP World History. I'll put this in the chat and pin this. The thing about these study guide packs, and Tom Ritchie was saying this, he said, you know, a lot of people have access to this. The College Board has access to this. So if you are such a clown, and I love you all, but don't be a clown, that you're like, bro, I'm gonna just copy and paste from the Marco Learning Guide. First of all, you can't copy and paste. Secondly, they're running your essays through plagiarism detection software. So this is a very useful tool for you guys to cram. What's the enlightenment in just a couple of lines? I've pinned this in the chat, but use this well. And it's the night before the exam, Emily. I want to take a minute and just center ourselves on it's important. It is 10 p.m. on the East Coast. This exam, the first exams tomorrow start at 12 noon. Is World History a 12 noon Eastern exam?
Yeah, mine's at 11 Central. Yeah.
11 Central. Remember, these AP exams start at the exact same time worldwide. No comment. I commented on my TikTok about that many times. But so here's the thing, is if you're taking the exam at 12 noon tomorrow, think about how to structure your time. The exam is in 14 hours from now, right? And you need to get yourself a nice 8.2 hours of sleep, milk and cookies tucked in as much as you can. And if that means, and the studying that you should do should be before you go to sleep. And Emily and I know this from our days in college and graduate school and everything with our students now. You get that information in your head beforehand. You focus, don't focus on all 800 and something years of AP World. Focus on 1 or 2 units. What are some other tips, Emily, for the last minute cramming? Using this time well, you're not going to dramatically improve your score. What do you do?
Yeah, don't do what's happening in the chat, which is like, I'm just seeing a ton of people that are like, can you explain this very specific thing? Can you explain this one person? Can you explain? No, don't worry. Like, don't worry about it. Literally, like, the way this test is designed is it's about general developments. So if you get a question on the test that's asking you, it looks like it's super, super, super specific about like the Majapahit and this one era and this blah, blah, blah. What they're really asking about is like trade routes or cultural diffusion or like one of the like 5 trends from each era, which I just went over in my live on my channel an hour ago. Like, that's what every question is actually about. And they want to see, can you apply weird factoids that you've never seen before? Can you look at that and zoom out and go, oh, I understand that. That's part of this bigger development that's going on. So again, it's not worth your time, and it's actually just going to stress you out to be like, oh shoot, I forgot who Marco Polo was. Don't go read Marco Polo's Wikipedia page. Do it later. It's really fascinating. But like, the reason why we care about him is that he's just an example of travelers spreading culture and knowledge along trade routes. And if you get a question about Marco Polo, that's what they're really asking you about, right?
And if you get a question about Marco Polo, you're here at Marco Learning, and that's half the way there through the name.
You're basically there.
And here's the thing, let's talk about this, because can we talk about the hysterical panicking about the Mexican Revolution?
Yes.
Okay, and here's the thing. Emily and I are both professionally trained historians. We went to graduate school to study. I studied medieval Spanish history. Emily is an expert in early modern Spanish and Latin American history. We know lots of things about Spanish and Mexico and history. And you know what? I don't need to have studied all this stuff about the Mexican Revolution. It's not my area of expertise.
I took a whole course in grad school called the Mexican Revolution, and it was from 1910 to 1920. And I read this prompt and went, I don't know what I would write for that. And I took a whole course on it. And yet, when I skimmed the 7 documents, I went, oh, okay. Wow, I didn't know that. Now I know that.
And Emily, that's such a great point. I actually never took the class in Mexican, so I'm even more like lost than you coming in. But then you know what? It's not about what you studied in your class. My teacher betrayed me. No, they didn't. You have a document in front of you, and you have a translation of all of the text there. You have work with the documents they give you. You know, we saw this on the AP European History exam. There was this document-based question about colonialism in India and whether it was influenced by liberalism. And people are like, what's India? I've never heard of it. What's liberalism? I don't know. And actually right there, document by document, you and I have gone over this. You had all the resources at your disposal. So everyone, one thing, and also there's a little bit of panicking in the chat. So we're gonna just take a moment, everyone. We're gonna do a little therapy session.
We're gonna talk about the DBQ in a second. Everyone chill out.
Yeah, chill. We're gonna talk about the DBQ in a second. And what I want you all to do in the chat right now is to type a sentence that we've been practicing on the Marco Learning channel. It's a very important sentence. It goes like this, and I'm gonna type it. I will not be perfect, comma, and that is, I'm spelling it wrong, is okay. Because here's the other thing, Emily. Mexican Revolution, Marco Polo's hair color, all the things that could possibly come up on this test. And you know what? You need 70 some odd % of the multiple choice. You need 5 out of 7 and 4 out of 6 and 2 out of 3, right? You need to do like a C+ job to get a 5 on this exam. So if all of you who are like, I don't know about Southeast Asia in 1917, you need to go in and trust the training you've got. And look at all these people typing, I will not be perfect.
I will just say Lydia posted in the chat, I will not be okay, and that is perfect, and it made me laugh really hard.
No, Lydia, you ruined it.
Totally contradicts, but it made me laugh really hard.
Okay, good. And that's, I think, laughing at yourself a little bit in this moment of cramming, guys, is really important. For those of you who've been studying this stuff for a lot and you feel overwhelmed, push that all away and go in. Both Emily and I will get 5s on this exam, but probably get some stuff wrong. We'd be embarrassed about it. We'd hide it at the Marco Learning parties. But it's a reality of this exam. You're coming in and you're just trying to score as many points as you can rather than be overwhelmed by that. So good. And if you're enjoying this video, by the way, everyone, press that like button, subscribe to our channel. Tom Ritchie was helping us earlier with it. We're at 19.6 thousand. So help us get to 20,000, guys. Cool. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Emily, for the DBQ, and I will jump into the chat.
Perfect. Yeah, and side note, I do have a TikTok, and I'm about 2,000 followers away from catching up with Marco Learning, which I just want to mention.
Bestie.
I've gotten in the last 5 days. I'm like coming up fast.
Bruh.
No. Bestie.
It's Marco Learning. I'm gonna make a TikTok about this whole battle. But anyway, DBQ.
Yeah. Okay.
Stop promoting.
So the DBQ, everybody chill out. The DBQ is actually the easiest part of the test, I promise you, because it's one question that you have an hour to think about. And you have it, again, like John said, like the DBQ is the open book. You have the 7 documents. That's the key that will give you the answer. Okay. You also get to type your DBQ, which is your advantage over the paper exam people, right? We're doing like a West Side Story battle between the two. Paper exam people got to go back and forth between some of their questions, and that's real great. But y'all get to type your essay, and so that means you can write this very strategically. I want to be super, super clear here. On the DBQ, the score is out of 7. If you should be trying to get 5 out of those 7 points. I suggest you pick 2 points on the rubric and say, I'm ignoring you tomorrow. One has to be complexity. I am not going to answer questions about complexity tonight. And I promise you I'm doing you a favor. It's not worth worrying about. I would also suggest evaluating the documents, hip or hap or happy or hippie or whatever. But I will talk about that in just a second. So In an ideal world tomorrow, and a perfect world tomorrow, not perfect, but perfect and okay, you would have your intro paragraph would be context and your thesis. You would have a body paragraph with a very simple topic sentence. You use 2 or 3 documents. You do that again. You press submit. And you have a 4 out of 7. I want to be really clear. You have context. You have a thesis. You have 2 or 3 body paragraphs where you use 6 documents. And that's it. You don't have to have a conclusion. You don't have to know anything about the essay. It could be on the Mexican Revolution. You don't have to know any additional information. You don't have to analyze anything, nothing. You just are like, here's what was going on. Here is my answer. Here's one smaller part of my answer. Document 1 proves my answer in this way. Document 2 proves my answer in this way. And you do that for 6 documents and you have a 4 out of 7, which is a great score. So everyone chill out. You don't have to have paragraphs. You don't have to have body paragraphs. You don't have to indent. No one cares about spelling. As a grader, please do indent. Please do have body paragraphs. It makes my life easier. But literally, people get like full credit sometimes for having like their context and thesis and then literally just having a paragraph for each document. Well, document 1 says this, and this proves my answer by saying blah, blah, blah. And then they move on to document 2. You don't have to group the documents. Your teacher might have been forcing you to group the documents all year, like I was forcing my students because it's good writing. But on the test tomorrow, you don't have to group the documents. If you have one weirdo and you don't know what to do with him, throw him in his own paragraph. Let him be a lone wolf. Like, it's totally fine, right? You don't have to have a counter argument. You don't have to do the Irish method of like X strongest counter argument. However, A and B, therefore, Y. I used to teach that too. That's great. That's a complex thesis. You don't have to do it. So the DBQ prompt was like, evaluate the extent to which economic factors motive something that caused the Mexican Revolution. You're going to be like, yes, they did. No, they didn't. They kind of did. That's your answer. And then you kind of establish your basic topics. So basically what that DBQ said, the DBQ on the Mexican Revolution, was essentially like, yeah, economic factors definitely caused the Mexican Revolution. However, there were 2 different aspects of this. There was frustration with foreign interference and support for the dictatorship. And then there was also like grassroots movements of peasants wanting their communal land back as it had been privatized. Like there's tons of answers, but the point is, if you evaluate the extent to which all they're doing is saying, here's a spectrum. It's either yes, no, kind of. Those are your answers. And then you just have to establish your line of reasoning of like, okay, why do I say kind of? So again, my answer for that would be like, yes, economic factors definitely caused the Mexican Revolution because blank and blank. And I have my thesis. You don't have to overthink it. It doesn't have to be your best right answer. It should be like your easiest right answer. Right? Like the only like bonus point you get for it being like a really, really super well thought out creative answer is complexity. Everything else you can write like a caveman, right? Like everything else you can just be like, people were mad about taxes, so they rebelled. Document 1 shows people being mad about taxes and then shows them rebelling. Like you can just, all they want to know is like, can you understand a document and put it into your own words, right? So again, context, which is where you take like the keywords of the prompt and you zoom out of one or more of those. So for the Mexican Revolution, context would be other revolutions going on in this time. The Russian Revolution. Hey, there were a few different like nationalistic kind of revolutions that were happening in this time, and a lot of them were economically motivated, like the Communist Revolution was. Also economically motivated was the Mexican Revolution. Boom. Or you could go previously in time. You could, if you know a little bit about Mexico in the 1800s, you could say like 100 years earlier, Mexico had their war for independence, where they finally broke away from Spain and created an independent country. However, by the early 1900s, they were back under another dictator and were rebelling again. And then you move into your thesis statement. So context is the only part of your essay where you can kind of zoom out of the prompt. Everything else in your essay, if you're going to bring in additional evidence, everything else has to be within all the rules of the prompt. So the trick, I think the one point that was like extra hard on that paper DBQ about the Mexican Revolution was additional evidence. because you had to know something on your own about the Mexican Revolution to get that point. Because additional evidence isn't the Russian Revolution, right? The prompt is economic causes Mexican Revolution. And so all of your additional evidence, everything has to be about those two things. And so, yeah, maybe some of those kids like could have gotten outside evidence for a different prompt, but not for that one. But otherwise, they could do every other point. The last thing before we kind of pause, take a breath, check out the chat again, is evaluating the documents. So what I suggest that you do is you do like almost like a first draft, second draft. What I suggest that you do is you look at the prompt very closely, and then you skim all 7 documents, and then you write all the stuff that comes to your brain relatively easily. So if you immediately can think of context, put that in there. At least address 3 documents, which gets you a point, but address as many documents as make sense to you. If there's a document that you're really confused by, in that first pass, just skip it, right? Put everything in that text box that you can, where you're like, okay, I was able to think of a lot of stuff. Now I'm going to go back and add in the points that are maybe going to require me to think a little bit more. And so again, if you see a document that has like a super clear point of view, go ahead and put that in your first draft, go for it. But I think otherwise I would leave the like evaluating the source to the end. I would only do that after you feel like you have exhausted every other part of the rubric. Only after you're confident that you have context, a thesis, you've successfully used 6 documents. That's the only time I would really go back in and try to force evaluating the document. So what that's going to look like is you have to identify and explain. It's like they did that for a reason. So you have a few options. You can pick like the historical situation of the document. John, actually, would you mind sharing your screen again and pulling up the Mexican Revolution DBQ? And I'll show an example of kind of like what HIP could be.
Yeah, let's do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and share this. I just shared, we're getting some questions about the digital exam. So I just shared that guide. And here we are, guys. This is the 2021 free response question for paper and pencil. This will not be what you guys see on the digital exam. Mm-hmm. And anyway, yeah, Emily, go ahead.
I just saw someone saying, don't skip the DBQ. Yeah, do not skip the DBQ.
Oh, yeah, that's not happening.
Don't do that.
We're telling you, like, don't worry about the complexity point and don't feel like you have to get the perfect thesis. But
write something.
Right, definitely submit.
So again, the easiest way, someone was like, what's the easiest way to get 5 out of 7? Here's what I think the easiest way is. You contextualize this by saying like, hey, other revolutions were going on. The Chinese Revolution and the Russian Revolution and blah, blah, blah. There we go. That's one point. Then you say, now I'm going to have a thesis. I'm going to say like economic factors definitely caused the Mexican Revolution because people were angry about foreign interference and a government that was not responding to the needs of the poor. Boom, that's my thesis. Okay. Then I have my body paragraphs where I'm supporting an argument using 6 documents. You can divide that up in whatever way you want. You could talk about all 6 documents in separate paragraphs. You could group them 3 and 3. It literally doesn't matter. That's a 4. And then you pick one of these other points to try for. If you know an additional piece of evidence, then you bring that in there. So I know some things about the Mexican Revolution. So I would say like, well, one of the revolutionary leaders was a man named Emiliano Zapata. And he kind of rallied the peasants because the peasants had this communal land that had been taken away and privatized by foreign companies. And so Zapata really motivated his army it was an army of peasants and they were fighting for their communal land. That's an additional piece of evidence I know. Most students didn't know that. And so instead, the other 5th point you can go for, if you can't think of outside evidence, is evaluating the documents for like point of view, whatever. And so again, I think that additional evidence is so much easier if you know something. You only have to do it once. Whereas evaluating the documents, you have to do it 3 times. But if you were going to evaluate a document, like if you just want to scroll to a random one, so yeah, let's do whichever one you think. Oh, that's a good one. Document 3. So what you're doing here is when it says evaluate the document, you've already used document 3 to support your argument. You've already done that. You're like, document 3 is showing that foreigners were heavily influencing the economy of Mexico, right? Like the Department of Commerce and Labor in the United States had a lot of interest in Mexico and blah, 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 blah. You've already done that. What you're now evaluating is the literal source information, this little text at the very top. Jose Francisco Godoy, the Mexican consul in New York City, toast at a banquet. Like, that's what you're evaluating. And what you're looking for is either what's the specific historical situation, like what do I know, what's going on in 1908, New York City or Mexico or whatever, or what's his point of view? Well, he's the Mexican consul in New York City. Huh, okay, so he's a government official of this dictator, right? He's giving a toast at a banquet for the New York Chamber of Commerce in celebration of the good business relationship between Mexico and the United States. So I'm going to call BS on this speech. That's what I'm basically doing when I'm evaluating the document. I'm saying, you know what? I think Jose might be a little bit inflating just how great this relationship is between the United States and Mexico. Maybe it's not quite as equal and wonderful and productive as he's making us think. Because one, he's a representative of the dictatorship. Two, he's literally in the United States speaking to Americans. And three, he's clearly benefiting from this unequal, unfair relationship because he's in a position of power. So like literally, that's what I'm doing. I'm basically calling into question some element of the document where I'm like, you know what? I don't know, we have to, and you can literally say I or we. Like, we should be a little wary of document 3 because the way the author is describing the relationship as super positive might be influenced by the fact that he's literally speaking to Americans. So he's not gonna like actually say how much they're screwing over the Mexican economy. That's what you're doing. You're not evaluating the document anymore. You're evaluating the source of the document.
And actually, Emily, this reminds me of the sort of nonsense we're seeing on TikTok where everyone's like, bro, I'm going to cheat. And actually, again, look at how much Emily cheated with the document right in front of her.
Yeah, it said it right there.
Jose Francisco Godoy is not, his Wikipedia page ain't it. This is a whole Wikipedia page for you about who Jose is and what he is doing. So it's a very important reminder. And I think, Emily, one thing about the way that you strategized about this is a big mistake we're seeing a lot of in the chat, which is this. And let me just remind you all here. Yeah, here they are, the 7 points in 6 bullets. They've actually, people are like, can we see the rubric? And the hip thing? Don't. It's right here in front of you. You've got a thesis, the easiest point to get. 60 to 70% of students on most AP history exams get that point. Only about half that percentage, around 30-something%, will get contextualization. You can earn a thesis, 1 whole point on the DBQ with 1 whole sentence, maybe 2.
That's it.
Contextualization, probably more than a sentence. It's not created equally with the thesis. It's harder to get. It's got to be specific. A lot of times 3 sentences, 4 sentences, a little bit bulkier, setting it up. So, you know, incorporating all the documents, 3 or 6 documents, much easier than sourcing 3 whole documents the way Emily did. That's a bit of a risk, right? You got to really reach out and make sure you're connecting it. This is not it. Complexity is not a strategy. That is not, it's not even how Emily and I are approaching the exam. Like, maybe we'll decorate the essay with complexity. By the way, if you want to see this in action, and if it's 7:20 on the West Coast, for example, I want to encourage you all, we have a playlist for AP World. It's sitting on top of this channel, the one that you guys are watching right now. We've got Emily writing a DBQ. I'll put this first, actually. See, the CEO of this playlist. Okay, Emily writes a whole DBQ, and then I grade it on the rubric, showing you all the points. There's also a DBQ walkthrough that shows you each of these things. Emily and I, our previous review. There's tons of material here. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, definitely check that out. And I've pinned to the top of the chat the actual unit review cheat sheets that we've got here for all of you. Okay, Emily, as we kind of wrap up here, we're going to post the recording of this video to our channel. Are there other big themes and ideas that we should cover for our last minute crammers here?
Let me see. Sorry, it's just telling me that my Mac's about to fall asleep, and I don't know why it's been plugged in the whole time. But I would say that one of the best things you can do if you want to cram, if your brain is going, like for me, actually, it makes me feel better to be like, I'm going to like review up until the time of the test. I think the thing you can quote unquote cram is the time periods and like the major civilizations. That is something that is actually very helpful and something you can sort of memorize. where like I joked with my students. I was like, if I see you walking down the hall and I yell 1200 or 1450, then my students could be like, Silk Road, Mongols, Song, medieval Europe, Aztecs. And I'd be like, great, go on with your day. You know what I mean? Like you should be able to like see a time period, 1450 to 1750, and be like, gunpowder empires, exploration, great, move on with your life. Because that is the thing that can help you out. That's like in a physics final, if you have your formula sheet or whatever. That's something where on the test, if you see a question, an SAQ that gives you that time period, even if you know nothing else, you can start with like, okay, what do I know? And then how can I use what I know to try to connect it back to the prompt?
Yeah, and Emily, I'll add to this. As somebody, I've spent a lot of time teaching and tutoring students for standardized tests. This is like my thing. I come from the test prep world. Isolating and focusing that thematic approach that you just talked about, like getting stuff, is really valuable. And it's important because that 1200 to 1450 range, being able to say Silk Road, overland routes connecting Asia and Europe, Indian Ocean trade as a vibrant whatever, having that is really important, because on this exam, when they give you something, to be able to draw from the well and get something rather than come up empty-handed is key, and including champa rice. There is a question here, by the way. I just want to reassure you as well, everyone. We are hearing on the first 2 days of AP exams, we've had hundreds of thousands of people take digital AP exams. We're hearing shockingly few stories of major problems. There are problems. Those are very frustrating. But I want to encourage you all that, like, so far it seems to be working, and the Wi-Fi issues that people faced in last year's exam, or Wi-Fi anxiety you guys have, it's probably not going to be an issue, because this software is actually saving your work as you go. And Emily and I have learned this the hard way. We lived in the olden times when like you wouldn't save something and then like whole files would disappear. Google Docs saves things automatically. This software is not Google Docs, but it saves automatically as you go. So don't stress about learning all the things. Don't stress about the software. There's a lot of stress that people are grabbing onto right now that is actually relevant. So we're all going to just push all that stress away, focus on 1 or 2 small tasks we can handle, and go in and trust what we know. Emily, other words of advice, other ways of focusing ourselves away from all the anxiety, and just on things we can actually do in preparation for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's just big ideas, like understanding the time periods, understanding the major developments, and knowing that like this might come off sounding negative, it's not meant to. There's not much you can do now. Like, you know what I mean? If you think you're going to go learn 800 years of history in the next 8 hours, like, you're not. And I say that with love, but it's like, so you can sort of rid yourself of that idea that you can even do that, right? That like at some point you should watch a show on Netflix. I recommend Somebody Feed Phil. It's delightful. He goes into some history, so maybe passively you'll learn some stuff. And then like try to go to bed, get up tomorrow morning, drink coffee if you do that, whatever, do a little bit of last minute reviewing, and then be like, whatever, I'm going to do my best. I literally think the healthiest way to walk into a test is to be like, I've done what I can, screw it, I'm just going to do it, and then I'm going to be done. Like, I think that's the healthiest way to go into it, is sort of like, I care, but I'm also just like ready for this to be over with, right?
I think it's a great approach. I also think that we need to do a group therapy session for a minute, and in this mode, as we kind of shift down, a couple reminders for you all real quick. This video will be posted to this channel. It will be added to our playlist for AP World, where you can hang out with us on the Marco Learning channel. Subscribe, hang out. Remember that Emily Glankler also posts amazing content on her page. Oh, that's the Marco Learning TikTok. Again, I'm in an epic battle with her. I'm muting her, hang on.
You were speaking Italian in one of your videos.
I just muted her. She's been muted. I have the full Zoom control. People, go to TikTok and follow me at Marco Learning. I'm desperate to beat Emily. The other thing, again, this playlist is here. We've got this ultimate guide to the digital AP exams. And this is something we wrote at Marco as soon as we got information about the exams. And I want to show you all a reminder here about a couple of the tips that we provide about annotation, typing. These are some really important things. Emily, again, is at Anti-Social Studies on Instagram, and I posted the free study guide pack in the description of this video. So Emily, what I'm going to do real quick while you talk them back from the edge, I'm going to go grab Marco, my dog. I'm going to hoist 68 pounds of fluff into my face and into this computer. And
Mm-hmm.
while I'm doing that as part of our group therapy session, if grab your phones, get them ready, everyone. You can take a little picture of Marco. It's a little circus show right before you take your real AP exam. I'll be back in a minute, and then
Yeah.
he will bless you all before you go into your test.
Yeah, you can see a grown woman with a master's degree in history doing a live YouTube with a dog, is what you can see, which is very exciting. The last thing I guess I just want to say is that, like, legitimately, like, the worst case scenario is you get a 1, you cannot get a 0. The worst case scenario is you get a 1, and the only people who have to know that are you and your teacher. You don't have to send that score to the colleges when you apply. It's fine. I've also never found a college that requires you to have a credit in world history. So, like, think of this as your trial test. Like, if you get credit, you get a 4 or 5, you'll get elective credit, you'll get hours. Marco. But if Marco is going to college, they're not going to tell Marco he has to take another world history class. I've never seen a college who does that. So just, like, take a deep breath and do your best and then move on with your life. Oh.
So Marco, by the way, his paws are a little dirty. Oh, bro, you can do it. His paws were a little dirty because he was digging in my garden. So 1 on the AP gardening exam for Marco. But anyway, there he is. Take a picture. Oh, hello. He's tired. He needs to watch a Netflix show.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to go to sleep. You can see him on our TikTok. We'll bring him in live. Maybe we'll do an AP World after party like we did last year.
We should probably do it on my TikTok because it'll probably have more followers by then.
Hate that. No, we'll do it on Instagram. Marco will wear a party hat. It'll be great. Listen, guys, you're going to do great. And in fact, in the chat, there's a lot of love, a lot of Marco therapy. The chat, there's so little enthusiasm for us. Somebody was like, now you guys seem really ancient a minute ago. And then the dog shows up and they're like, perfect.
They said we seem ancient?
Yeah, we're old. We're like 50, bro.
I'm 33.
Okay.
How dare you?
I like 50.
I'm a millennial.
Okay. We're cool people. We're young and we're cool and we're hanging on to our youth. We're on TikTok, people. We're youthful TikTokers.
I'm on TikTok.
We're dancing. We're not dancing. I don't think
I called you bestie earlier.
I called you bro. Okay. That's probably inappropriate. Anyway, listen, tomorrow right now, not tomorrow. I want you to type in the chat. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine because I'm going to do it right now. Everything is going to be fine. Even if you're crying while you say it, everything, even if it's not true, type it anyway. It becomes more true when you type it in. Everything's going to be fine because everyone in the chat's like, nothing's going to be fine all night. You guys are going to do great. All the hard work. Emily, you're a teacher. I'm a teacher. I taught my 6th graders, my 9th graders, my 12th graders. We had a tough year. We were wearing masks. We had Zoomers. We had people in class. We had to shut down. We had so many things going on. You guys are heroes to me because you made it through pandemic high school for a whole year as students. All your teachers are heroes to me because we had a not fun year doing this. But you know what? Here we are, the night before the AP World History exam. We're cashing in on all the hard work that we have done. We're trusting our own voices. We're going to go in there and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's how that goes.
Yeah. And then a day from now, you're going to be done and you're going to be like, wow, why was I so stressed about that? I promise you.
Bestie, don't be stressed.
No stress, bestie.
Thank you. This is Emily from Antisocial Studies, an amazing YouTube channel, an amazing Instagram page.
And TikTok.
And TikTok page. We love you all. You're going to do great. Be in touch with us on social media. Comment on Emily's posts on Antisocial Studies and ours at Marco Learning. And